This is Can You Relate with Christine, but it's less can you relate and more can you relate with Christine. Are you happy or are you just comfortable? Are you happy or are things just familiar, safe, predictable? There's this misconception that to be within your comfort zone means that you are happy. But most people are utterly and profoundly miserable in their comfort zones. But they would rather be miserable within the parameters of something that's familiar, predictable, something that they've experienced even a million times over, but they know it. They know it like the back of their hands. They would much rather experience that than dare to venture into the unknown, into the unpredictable and the unfamiliar. Better the devil you know, which is your comfort zone, than the devil you don't, which is the unknown. Now, this is not a blanket statement. This is not an absolute truth. It's not a rule, a general rule. It is just a general tendency, let's say. There are a lot of people that actually are very happy within their comfort zones, but maybe they think that they're happy. So it's not my place to assume what people are or aren't experiencing. So what I'm going to talk about is my experience with comfort zones, my personal hands-on experience, my secondhand experience in how I have been a supporting character for other people experiencing their comfort zones and experiencing life venturing outside of their comfort zones. So like I said, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Now, the only constant in life is change. The only guarantee that you are ever going to have, the only absolute truth, there could be more absolute truths, but I mean, like in the context of, I'm over dramatizing it just for the sake of context. The absolute truth is that the only constant is change. Everything is in flux. Nothing is ever going to be the same. No matter how hard you might try to recreate the exact same circumstance, there are variables outside of your control. So even if you do try to recreate it up to 99.99999%, there is still going to be one thing that's going to be different, and this different thing is going to transfer into the remainder of the experience. So no matter how hard you try, you are never going to be able to recreate the exact same experience because there are so many variables outside of your control. What singular variable that is within your control is your response to what is going on outside of you. Your response to what is going on inside of you, inside your mind and inside your heart. Because the only constant is change, there are so many things that are outside of our control. There are so many things that are unpredictable. No matter how much you sit and you strategize and you try to have contingency plans, things are never going to unfold in the way that you expect them to. So you could have plans A through Z. You will still have something unfold in a way that you probably never anticipated, or in a different way, maybe a more pleasant way, maybe a way that causes a bit more discomfort than you anticipated, because we cannot control life. There are more uncontrollable variables than there are controllable ones. So what do? If you can't control 99.9% of everything that's going on around you, why spread out your focus across all of these 99.9 things? Instead, just laser focus on the 0.01% that is within your control, which is how you show up, which is how you behave, what you do, what you don't do, what you say, how you respond. All of the things that have to do with you, all of the things that are personal, that are subjective, Those are the things that you can control. And by controlling the controllables, you're doing your part. Just take a step back and just let the chips fall where they may. Comfort zones, they're predictable, they're familiar, they're known. We know what to expect if or when or should a specific situation repeat itself. It reminds me of that saying, insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. That is what happens within the comfort zone. You show up in the same way that you always do, and you expect things to be different when you're not even willing to change the one thing that you can change, which is how you show up. So, insanity. Comfort zone equals insanity. My complete and honest opinion about comfort zones. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't something comforting about comfort zones. It feels safe. Sometimes that sense of safety could be a false sense of safety, one that is holding you back, one that is counterintuitive, counterproductive, one that is just horrible and destructive. But there's also that sense of safety that feels like a warm hug, that feels like an embrace, that feels like reassurance that you need, that feels like this little cocoon that you just need to retreat into, gather your strength, gather your energy, and then when you emerge from it, you can just hit the ground running, you know? So anything, not just comfort zone, anything within moderation is beneficial. But the second you start to really lean on it, you start to use and abuse it, it becomes a crutch. It's no longer something that holds you up when you need to. It becomes something that is just holding you down. And that is the case for comfort zones. Now, comfort zones could be like a small thing and on a small scale, like taking a different bus route. It could be on a bigger scale, like quitting your job and making a huge life and career shift. It does not matter. There's so many different degrees. It's a huge ass spectrum, but change is inevitable. And as such, we have a lot of different comfort zones in life. Now, I personally don't think it's a bad thing to stay within certain comfort zones, but I also see how overstaying your welcome within a specific zone could do more harm than good. There's this quote, my sister sent it to me a few years ago, and it says something along the lines of, when it's time for you to leave a situation, you will start to feel so uncomfortable. Life, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, life will make you feel so uncomfortable in that specific situation that you have no other choice but to exit that situation. Now, I definitely agree based off of my experience, but I also see other people how no matter how uncomfortable they are in a specific situation, they are choosing to remain within the comfort zone. They are choosing to remain within that situation. They are choosing to remain within that ego identity, within that false sense of security, because that's all they've ever known. And who are you to argue with something someone has known their entire lives? If they're not willing to help themselves, if they're not willing to make any changes, there's nothing you can ever do for them. The best thing you can do for them is just take a step back and let them figure things out their own way. You can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves, and that applies to you. You cannot help yourself if you are not ready, willing, and able to receive that help, to make the changes, to get uncomfortable. Be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that almost starts to become like after you go running, you get a runner's high. That starts to become kind of like an uncomfortable high. The more you do things that are outside of your comfort zone, you get this rush afterwards and you feel invincible. You feel expansive. You feel like there's just something about you that's growing, that's changing, doing things you never thought you were capable of, doing things that you never even just considered doing, not even capable of, doing things that you never even considered doing. And then you look back on it like, I did that? Wait, I'm capable of doing that? So if I was able to do that, then what else can I do? What else can't I do? What else is possible for me? What else is within my reach that I never even considered? Maybe the things that I thought were out of my reach, they are actually closer to me than I gave myself credit for, because I'm doing this. I'm doing this thing that I never thought possible, which has taught me that I can do anything I set my mind to. I can do anything as long as I'm willing, ready, and able to show up. And it does become something you crave. So comfort zones, yes, there are a lot of times I do enjoy being in my comfort zone, or I know that, okay, I'm in my comfort zone. I need to make this little change. I need to take a step a little bit outside of the comfort zone to venture back into it at a later stage. And sometimes I'm conscious of the decision. I intentionally make the decision to prolong my stay in my comfort zone because I know I'm going to get out of it at one point. So sometimes I just want to feel a little bit like lazy or a little bit indulgent, and I just stay in my comfort zone for a little longer than necessary. But the fact that I need to stay in it longer than necessary means that it is necessary. And that's the thing. Necessity changes depending on the level that you need to replenish. Sometimes I need to stay in my comfort zone a little bit longer because my energy levels need a bit longer to recharge. Sometimes I go from breaking one comfort zone to breaking the other just because I feel like I have a lot of momentum and I feel like I am willing to keep up with this momentum and just keep moving forward. So it's not one and done. It's not, okay, I figured out a formula and this is what I'm going to apply all the time moving forward. It's okay, I know that I can be intentional whether I want to stay or get out of my comfort zone. And just every situation, you just take it at face value. You cross that bridge when you get there. And that's it. You just take it one bridge at a time, one milestone at a time. So getting outside of your comfort zone, trying something new, it doesn't have to be quitting your job and starting your whole life over in a new career or a new country. It could be as simple as taking a gymnastics class, learning a new language, being a beginner at something. Getting outside of your comfort zone doesn't have to be these huge life changers. It could be something very tiny, but that has such a profound effect that effect is going to transfer into other areas of your life. And like I said, it creates this kind of like runner's high and you become so excited to just constantly try new things, to constantly put yourself out there. You develop this beginner mindset of you always just want to learn and experience new things and then just enjoy living. You feel alive. Stepping outside of your comfort zone makes you feel alive because living within the confines of your comfort zone, you're only existing. You're not living. You are operating on autopilot most of the time. How many times have you, for example, on the way to work or on the way to gym, you take the exact same route when you're driving? Exact same route. You're on autopilot where you leave the house, you get to the gym or you get to work, and you take a second, you look around, you're like, wait, how did I get here? I don't remember driving. I don't remember taking the exit. I don't remember parking the car. But how the fuck did I get here? Because you're operating on autopilot. That is what happens when you are living within the confines of your comfort zone. Now, always jumping into the unknown isn't also healthy either. Because every time I've stepped into an unknown situation, there is that sense of fight or flight, whether it's physical, whether it's psychological, whether it's emotional. There is this sense of fight or flight of I'm in a new environment, I'm in a new situation. There's so much that's unpredictable. There's so much that's unknown. It's unfamiliar. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's required of me. I need to be on high alert so that I know how I can respond to this specific situation, or I know how best I can show up to the best of my abilities in this specific situation. But I have learned that the more awareness you can inject into your little awareness toolbox, the less complicated life is going to feel, because you're going to feel like, okay, whatever comes up my way, I've got this. I just turn on my awareness, I fine-tune my intention, I notice how I'm feeling in this specific situation, and I deal with it to the best of my abilities. Now, we have the comfort zone on one hand, and we have the unknown on another hand. I have come up with a middle ground. Now, again, this term might already exist, but just let me pretend like I came up with it, okay? Thanks. So the middle ground is what I like to call the known zone. It's when you are experiencing an unknown, and the more you experience it, the more familiar it's starting to become, or at least the less unknown it's starting to become, on the way to becoming more familiar, on the way to this slowly starting to be a part of your expanded comfort zone. So it's not necessarily within your new parameters of your comfort zone yet, but it's not entirely unknown because you've been experiencing it a few times, or the more you experience it, the less unknown it's becoming. So I call it the known zone. It's when something feels like it's not as terrifying as it was the first or second or third time around, but you definitely still feel a little bit self-conscious or a little bit uncomfortable, but it's less so. So I call this the known zone. And what's so nice about the known zone from my experience is that the more time I spend in the known zone, the more comfortable I feel and the more confident I feel. So the silliest example, I had a fear, I still do, but I feel more comfortable and confident about this, okay? This is what I mean about the known zone. Now it's something that's within my comfort zone, but for a very long period of time, it was within the known zone. So I have a fear of looking stupid in public situations. And one of those public situations was on the bus. I'm not used to taking public transportation, so there's a lot that I wasn't familiar with, like what's the etiquette when you get on the bus, or when you're on the bus, what to do, what not to do, how to read the transit app, how to get around using the different buses, just like the whole how to, or like the whole public transportation or transit bus for dummies, okay? So I had a fear of looking stupid, and that would actually paralyze me so much so that I would choose to stay home instead of taking the bus and going someplace, because the thought of getting on the bus or getting on the wrong bus or doing something embarrassing on the bus or doing something wrong or not knowing bus etiquette, that would give me so much anxiety that I would just be like, no, screw that shit. I'm just gonna stay home, or I'll take an Uber, whatever. And this has happened to me every time I even travel just for a week or so in general with public transportation, because we don't really have that at home. We don't have a bus system back home. So it's not something that was familiar that I grew up with. So because it's unknown, it's uncomfortable, it's unpredictable, it's unfamiliar, it causes me a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress, and it would actually debilitate my ability to show up and to do things and to just go out and live my life, because of how terrified I was of feeling stupid, of looking stupid. My fears, the worst case scenarios happened to me. And after they happened, after the adrenaline calmed down, I realized, okay, it wasn't that bad. I understand why it's anxiety inducing, but it happened and I'm alive. I'm fine. I survived, just like Ross. I survived. So after those things happened, I was like, oh, okay, it happened. I'm fine. I dealt with it. It worked itself out. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Our mind and our ego has a tendency to catastrophize situations, because it's all about self-preservation. So it makes sense to expect the worst case scenario, so that if that worst case scenario were to unfold, you would have expected it and you would have at least a little bit of knowing regarding what to do. Even if you don't know what to do, at least the shock isn't going to be as, shocking, because you already anticipated in your mind in one way or another. So after those worst case scenarios happen and I realized I survived, now if, let's say, I get on the wrong bus, or I get off at the wrong stop, or I do something that is not acceptable, not acceptable. Or like, for example, if I'm standing in the bus and I accidentally don't see that there's an old person coming and I don't move out of the way for them. If that happened 5 months ago, I probably would have come home and just like sat for 12 hours replaying that entire experience in my mind and just being like, oh my God, like that's so embarrassing. How did you not look? You should have more spatial awareness. You should just pay attention. I looked so stupid in front of a busload of people. Now, for example, if I didn't pay attention and there's an old person, let's say I'm sitting down and an old person walks in and I didn't pay attention, someone nudges me and say, can you, and tells me, can you let that person sit down? I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. My apologies, have a seat. And then boom, that's it, it's done, no big deal. Experiencing the known zone allowed me to get more confident and more comfortable being uncomfortable, because I feel confident now in my abilities to just find my footing. I feel confident in the fact that things do work out. I feel confident in the fact that, okay, if something happens, it's not a big deal. And now I feel, because for me, there are different unknowns. Like there are some unknowns that I feel comfortable with, other unknowns that I feel uncomfortable with. So even with the unknowns, I'm picky. Like my ego picks which one it's okay potentially being judged and embarrassed in, like in the situation, and which one it just feels like it's going to completely shatter my world. That's very weird. I find that very odd that my ego picks and chooses when it's going to feel upset about something and when it's not, when it's the exact same thing, just doing something outside of my comfort zone. Like, why do you get to pick and choose? Like, that doesn't seem fair. Just pick yes or no. But yeah, get comfortable being uncomfortable, because I'm learning that the comfort zone, just like anything in life, in moderation, is beneficial. The second you start to use and abuse it, it starts to lose its appeal, it starts to become counterproductive, and it starts to do more damage than good. It starts to become a crutch. Life is going to be full of uncomfortable situations. Throughout the different stages in life, you're going to go through different experiences that are going to expand the parameters of your comfort zone. You can choose to keep it expanded, or you can choose to contract it back to its original size and its original parameters. You have a choice. But there is this little known zone in between the unknown and your comfort zone. Because the way that I see it, something starts off in the unknown. The more you do it, the less unknown it starts to become, until it is within the parameters of the known zone. And now within the known zone, you start to feel a bit more comfortable with this. You start to feel a bit more confident. It's still new. It's not something that is just automatically a part of your routine or just a regular part of your day-to-day or your being or your doing. But it's on the way there. It's getting there. And then, without realizing, it's going to move from the known zone into the comfort zone. Now, it could stay within the comfort zone for a while and still prove to be beneficial to you. So this thing might develop, it might change in how it looks, it might change in degree, it might change in variation, which will bring it back to unknown. So it's not entirely unknown, it's just an unknown new version of it. It'll spend less time in the known zone and it'll go back into the comfort zone a little bit more. It makes so much sense in my mind explaining that. I really hope that the way that I used my words to explain it, that the way that I articulated it really did justice to what I'm trying to say. So I really hope that you got what I'm trying to say. But essentially, yes, the only constant in life is change. And as such, you are going to constantly find yourself in and out of the unknown, the known zone, and your comfort zone. So the more adaptable and flexible and confident you are in the unknown, just like my yoga teacher taught me years ago, be comfortable being uncomfortable. The more you are okay with the fact that there's so much outside of your control and that the only thing that you can do is choose how you want to show up, choose what you want to do, what you want to say. As long as you're aware that you can't control the uncontrollables, you can only control the controllables. And even within the controllables, the only thing that you can't control is how you show up. So as long as you are showing up to the best of your ability, and this looks different from one day to the next. So as long as you show up to the best of your ability, as long as you're aware of how you're showing up, as long as you're intentional with how you are showing up from the unknown to the known to the comfort zone, then you're just riding the wave of life. I read in a book this morning that you could either stand with your back to a wave and let the wave just crash and knock you over, or you can face the wave, lay down on your back, and just let the wave, just ride the wave and let the wave carry you to shore. You get to choose. Are you gonna let the wave knock you out, or are you going to ride the wave and enjoy it? And on that note, before I continue rambling on, because we all know that I can continue rambling on for hours and hours on end, but I don't think the camera has that much storage, and I could start to sound a bit more redundant than I'm sure I've already sounded up to this point. Anyways, I digress. And on that note, see you next time.